My name is Dr. Youngmi Kim. I am the principal at Herbert Hoover Middle School in Maryland in Montgomery County Public Schools.
You moved to the U.S. in elementary school as a 1.5 generation immigrant, navigating a new language and a culture before building a lasting career in education. How did those early experiences with your immigrant identity shape your decision to become an educator? And how have they helped you connect with and support students from all different backgrounds?
I immigrated in 1973 with my parents and my siblings. I have 2 brothers and a sister, and we immigrated together. I think I was 8 years old, and I came as a 3rd grader. In school, like many of our students have experienced once coming to the United States, I have experienced those hardships and challenges of learning a new language, new culture, exotic. And back in the day, they used those kind of words where I was the only one. So I didn't look like anybody else. And so there was lots of curiosity, but also I think a little bit, I did experience some bullying. And I remember, like one of my memories is of recess. Recess is hard for kids, but it's particularly hard for kids who don't speak English. And so I remember being outside at recess and being by myself and being against the wall or the fence, playing by myself and watching everybody getting along. And I remember also being in the class just waiting for teachers to get to me because they were so busy with everybody else. And also I think training for ESOL students back then. We call them EML students now, but back then I don't think teachers were equipped to support students with language challenges. So I did a lot of waiting, and I feel like I didn't really have a place at school until I met my first teacher, ESOL teacher, Mr. Greenblatt. I remember feeling like his classroom was a haven. He is someone we went to for everything. He was our parents at school. And I think I remember him often because as I am leading a school of, I have 120 teachers here, and I do share my single story with the staff. Every year I start with my own story and my travels and why I need teachers to take care of the most impacted kids. And for us, our school improvement is to support EML students. That's where we need to do better at. But so I share my story of my experiences, the social challenges that I experienced so that our teachers can embrace our students, care for our kids. And so that has been what has been my biggest challenge is really my greatest gift. I've now found that I leverage that to help our kids, our families, and really work with our teachers to meet the needs of all kids. One of the other safe havens for me outside of the school was the church. That was my community because that's where I found other people that look like me. And that was also where I kept my identity, my culture, my language. Yeah, so if it wasn't for, I think, those special people in our lives, the teachers and the leaders and our church and the community there, I would have had a very hard time. And so those are the kind of past experiences that I share with our staff because they don't have the same experiences I have. And so they need to experience that and understand where the kids are coming from. And as I support them, and I have a new assistant principal now, she too is Korean. If nothing else, I hope to build leadership in students and leadership in our teachers, and also build future Korean leaders in the school system because there isn't many of us. So I am unabashedly proponent and I push for new Korean leaders in the community. In Montgomery County in particular, have had several, I think 3 Korean assistant principals, one of who is now, actually 2 that are now principals at their own schools. And so if nothing else, my past experiences have helped me help others.
As a minority woman step into the role of principal within the U.S. public school system, you will likely face your share of challenges. How did you navigate those visible and invisible barriers? And what core principles have guided your leadership along the way?
So before becoming a principal, I was a teacher. So I've been in education for 30 years. And you have to have minimum 5 years of teaching experience before you become an assistant principal and so on. So obviously we have to go to school and all of those things. When I first became an assistant principal, I experienced my first overt racism. I had a principal who kind of used my background as a stick and said things like, oh, maybe your issues around communication is because you don't speak English so well. Or maybe you're passive because that's your culture. So I've never had someone straight out say those things to me. So I was a little bit, obviously concerned about my position as an assistant principal and how I might support that principal and how I can support kids. So I remember it being one of my most difficult years, and I would, it was like traveling probably like 40 minutes to get to school and back, and I did a lot of praying that year. I remember praying on the way to school and then on the way home. And I just asked for God's guidance and care, and just for me to understand, be flexible, be humble in the work. I had to find my guide, my support system outside. So whether it was other leaders in the county, there used to be an organization called Asian American Educators Association, which I later became president of several years. But that group of women, they were other principals, other central office leaders, Chinese, Japanese, and we kind of came to a common understanding because we had a common experience. And I remember they would promote me with other leaders, and and I had to kind of. There's this a cultural thing where, as a Korean or American woman, you have to be humble. You have to be on the background. You can't be assertive. Those are some of the things that I had to break out of, because in this work, it doesn't help. So I remember they were like, no, this is how we speak. This is how we shake people's hands. This is how we tell about ourselves, because we're not used to bragging. We're not used to putting ourselves out there. So those are some of the things I had to break a habit of. And it wasn't until it was brought to my attention that, hey, there are strengths in our culture and in our background, but we really also need to think about what is the barrier that we need to, not so much as a barrier, but challenges that we have to address, and how might we come out of that. So I remember those mentors being a huge advocate for me. And one of the my sisters, I call them my sisters, 이광자 선생님, she was a huge support for me. And she was somebody I looked up to and learned a lot from. And in kind, I want to turn around and serve others. So those were women that modeled love and care, but also servant leadership. So in that I wanted to also do that. In my role as a principal, I have experienced racism even as a principal. I have sometimes people that don't know that I'm the principal come into the building and say, hey, thinking that I'm the secretary or I work in the cafeteria. A lot of assumptions made about who I am, and would say, "Hey, where's the principal? I'm here to," like, that's me, you know? So I have many experiences like that. So I intentionally would have to dress a certain way. Other principals might be okay dressing casually to school. But for me, I had to be very intentional about what I look like, how I spoke, and how also the assertiveness and such, and making sure that I advocated for my school in that way. So while others might not think about those intentionally, it's something that I always had it in my mind that, hey, those are, I have many strengths that comes with my culture, but also there are some things that I need to address as I lead. And as I work with the teachers, as I previously shared, I'm a Korean American leading 120 varied staff members from all over the world with different race background. And so I've used my culture as leverage and as a strength. Before, when I was a child, it was a challenge. But now I've come to feel and know that it's actually a strength that I could leverage as I lead others. So I will share my story. I will share minorities. And one of the things about Hoover is that we have many Korean teachers here. We have teachers from all walks of life. We have Muslim teachers. We have Chinese teachers. We have Black teachers. But we have many Korean teachers, and I'm unabashedly recruiting those Korean Americans to be part of our school, because our school is made up of 54% Asians, and our students need to see people like us in their classroom. I've come to feel very confident about who I am and who I represent and the community I serve.
As a Christian leading a whole school community, how does your faith anchor your life and leadership? In what ways do your spiritual value and prayer life influence how you make decisions and communicate with your students, staff, and parents?
My personal relationship with Christ shapes what I do and what I do every day. To me, it's not just about the title of the principalship. As a principal, I have the honor of caring for 950 kids and 120 staff members. And as Christ has modeled servant leadership, I too hope to do that every day. So when I come through the door, I think first of care and love for kids, and then I hope that in turn my staff also does likewise. So we talk about that all the time. How, sometimes teachers will say, hey, why doesn't that parent do X, Y, Z? And I say, maybe they can't. And I said, when they're here, they're our kids. We are the parent for them. And if nothing else, we have to care for them. So when a kid gets hurt, and it has happened in many schools, and it has happened here, when a student gets hurt, I'm the one that goes on the ambulance and goes with the kids to the hospital, because no parent wants to come to the hospital when their child is at their most critical times alone. I think it's about the work, but it's the work of caring and loving kids. That's where, when I came into this job, actually because of church. So I was in nursing, in my undergrad nursing classes, and 조남목 목사님 said to me when I went to First Korean Presbyterian Church when I was a college student, he said, oh, can you take some classes in education so we could have a school? And I took the class, and I'm like, my eyes opened up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, God called me to this. I love this. It's not work for me. I could go to class and I enjoy it. It's like that hour of class in college is sometimes very difficult thing. But when I sat in those education courses, I felt like I finally got my calling. And I think about this job as not just a job or a career, but in the role that I am in, I can serve God and I can serve my community. It's not just about teaching and making sure kids learn. Sometimes I get to do amazing things like take kids to get support for there was this one student when I was an elementary school principal. He couldn't walk because he had his legs would cross every time he tried to walk. I took his mom and him and his mom to a local organization that provided free medical care. So George Washington doctors, they would give their time and the medicine. So I remember taking him and his mom, and it was a Korean child who didn't speak any. They were new from Korea. Women get Botox for their faces. Well, Botox also helps if you have muscle issues. So it's so expensive, we all know, and they use Botox on his legs so his legs wouldn't cross. And we were able to teach him how to walk. So it has nothing to do with math or English, but those are the kind of work I get to do that I feel so privileged to do beyond teaching. I get to help kids who, a lot of our kids experience challenges, emotional challenges. So sometimes they talk about suicide, wanting to harm themselves. So I get to work with counselors and then help kids understand, they come first. And as we all know, Christ loves children, right? So I get to help in that work. And I'm getting a little emotional, but that's what I feel like this work means most to me. It's not about teaching, not about my title as a principal and all of that, but every day I have the privilege to come to work and do that, and it's magical.
As an educator on the front line and a mentor who has walked this path, what advice or encouragement would you share with the young Korean American women and the minority youth who aspire to be leaders in their fields?
In the 70s and 80s when I first came to the United States, and I remember seeing a video about the melting pot and all these characters, all these different people from different cultures jumping into the melting pot. And then the message being that you had to be American. The message being that you have to assimilate to the majority, which is obviously at the time was white. And in so doing, you lose a little bit of yourself. Sometimes you lose a lot of yourself. And now, as we have talked about, now it's more of a salad bowl where you kind of keep the integrity of who you are as in the whole of it. I think that, and also that whole, later on, the model minority myth, I think while it highlights Asians as being hardworking and all of that, when it's sometimes not the most positive influential concepts, because how about if you don't fit in that myth and you're not perfect? Because I think it leads to kids not feeling that they are okay, and leads to students feeling badly about themselves. When it gets really at its worst, students feeling like they're not right. And we have had, as a middle school principal, I have experienced kids, and I know this is stretching it, but not so much, not really, because I have had kids who I had to do suicidal interventions with. And not that that model minority myth does that to everybody, but I do think that it negatively influences kids to thinking that they have to be a certain way and who they are is not okay. And as I have shared, we are perfectly imperfect, and that God made us who we are, and that we have to embrace, before we embrace others, we have to embrace ourselves. So on Saturday, this last Saturday, we had the teachers from the Korean school here. They were doing training about Korean language, culture, But aside from the language and the culture, to me, when I walk through Korean school on Saturdays, it's about belongingness. I see kids feeling like I belong because I'm with, like as I have felt in Korean at church. I think on Saturdays when I come here and I see them happy, smiling, for me, the word belonging comes up, love comes out. I think about care when I see it, and I see them very confident. So what I would tell kids what advice I would give kids, to know that you're not less. Be confident in who you are, be strong in who you are, and know who you are. Connect with your family, talk with your family, get to know who they're about. Talk to your grandparents. They have amazing stories to tell. Recently, my son sat with my mother and she was telling her story about, when the Japanese had taken over Korea and her experience and amazing things she had to overcome. And he just saw her in a different light, not just grandmother who cooked in the kitchen, but this grandmother who was a leader, this grandmother who immigrated here with no language, but somehow she was a driver of a bus with like 8 other women, and she gave them employment. Yes, they clean apartments and everything, but without her driving and leading and supervising the team, like these women wouldn't have the income or the wherewithal to take care of their families. And it seems like such a little thing, but I remember my mother striving to work so hard to take care of her family. And I remember I was not the best kid. Some people that knew me back when, I probably was perfectly imperfect. It's a perfect word for it. And I used to get in trouble. I used to be not so good, not such a good student. But whenever the teachers would have to call or my report card wasn't perfect, I used to feel so bad because I remember her striving so hard, and last thing I ever wanted to do was to add burden to her. But she was also, for me, my first model of a leader, and how strong she was and how much challenges she overcame. And so I think about her, and I want kids to know they can do it. And I want parents to know that you don't have to know everything. You don't have to teach your kids how to read. You don't have to make sure like they get tutors. Sometimes somebody once asked me, like, because my kids had done really well in school, like, what did you do? Did you tutor them? Did you send them to centers? They did none of those things. And somebody said, well, my answer is not the right answer for everybody, but I didn't do it. They didn't go to school. They didn't go to centers. They didn't have tutors. But what I did say was, I just expected, and they knew what I expected. And that not only with the expectation, but with the expectation came care and love, unconditional love for them. So they didn't have to be perfect, but they had to answer for that to themselves, that they did the best that they could ever do. So I want to tell kids to strive for the best, strive to be the best that they can be, and strive because God made you who you are. Please like and subscribe. See you at Manna.